Hi again. In the last video we did a little traffic cone. I showed you how to set up S3D for the A10M or A20M and import a traffic cone with two separate STLs that fit together to print two colors. Well, this time around, just do a quick one showing how to take a solid object, just one STL, and split it horizontally into separate processes so you can print two or more colors in the vertical axis, the z-axis, without having separate STLs. And you see I have just a single little traffic cone. I'll pick on traffic cones just because they're quick and easy to show. And we'll have to add a process. This is the same process, the same profile that I used for the last one. So I know the settings will all be the same, but I'll just flip through them here to make sure. You want to make sure all your settings for the left and right extruders are correct, and as many of the settings as possible to be the way you're going to want them, because once we break this up, we're going to have probably about 5 processes, and if you forgot to change some settings, you're going to have to go back and change them in each and every process. So it's easier to kind of go through and make sure you've got them set the way you want them before you start. So our left extruder is going to be tool 0. Nozzle diameter, multiplier, extrusion width is all correct. I always use auto, or I'll set manual, but I almost always use a line width or extrusion width that is larger than the nozzle diameter because things just come out better that way, and it's recommended anyway. Retraction, I use 5 millimeters and 45 millimeters per second. I never use extra restart or retraction vertical lift, or Z-hop it's called in some other slicers. I will usually throw a little coast at the end. This is only active when you come to the end of a line. So like the Z-seam will hide a little bit better without a big blob there if the extruder stops extruding just a little bit before it gets to the end. And then we'll go to right and make sure it's set the same, except the tool index is going to be tool 1. All the rest of the settings look the same, so that's good. We get a little bit of infill set, although I don't think this model will use infill except maybe at the base. Layer, the primary extruder doesn't matter right now. We'll show that in a few minutes what will happen to that. Layer height will go with 0.2. Top and bottom solid layers 4 each. Outer perimeter shells will set at 2. First layer height, I never go as far as 0.3. That's just crazy. I usually go, anywhere between 0.2 and 0.25, somewhere in there. Additions, I use a little bit of a brim, even though I don't really need to. You see this is only set for 5 lines, really just to get things started onto the build plate. So it's not, if by some odd chance that the filament hasn't been purged correctly before I start, it gives it a little chance to start coming out of the nozzle and sticking down to the plate before it starts on the model itself. I always leave my skirt extruder on the left because that's my primary extruder most of the time. Infill, same thing. We don't have to worry about anything here. I believe these are all default values. Support, no support for this model. Temperatures, just a point to note, you never want to change the temperature identifier for the A10M or A20M. Because if you go and switch this thinking you're using tool 1, you're going to be trying to heat a heater that doesn't exist. So that's always 0. And that says shared heater, that's the extruder or the hot end. And that also says T0, that's good. Cooling, set however you want. This is just sort of a general printing thing for me. I don't start the fan until at least layer 4. And ramp it up a little bit at a time just to give the air duct a little chance to get a little further away from the bed before it really starts on full speed. Gcode, this is all default values except for the build volume. We have to change to match our plate. And so for the A10M, that's 235 by 235 by 260. A20M, you'd set it to, I think, 255, 255, and 260 or 250. And like I said, all the rest are default. Scripts, I don't use much here. You can see I just have home in there. That's all I really need until I do some mixing or gradients. Then I put the script for that here. We won't need any layer change, retraction, or tool change script, and a pretty basic ending script. Just turn off the extruder in the bed and move the nozzle out away from the model so it just doesn't sit there in one place and melt a big blob in the top of the model when it gets done. Excuse me. Model, let's see, speeds. Speeds, just pretty basic all around printing speeds. 40% for the outline underspeed. That means the very outside perimeter is going to print at 20 millimeters per second. Movement speed, you want to keep kind of high most of the time. A model like this, it won't really matter. But when you get, say, moving from island to island or from model to prime tower, you want to move between 100 and upwards of 150 millimeters a second, which is fine with the A10M, A20M, as long as you have your acceleration for travel set to 1,000 or less, and the jerk set to 10 or less, so you don't get layer shifting. Other, I don't believe there's anything in other than setting the filament diameter. And then in the advanced tab, whoops, that's left over from another, well, that's left over from another try here. I'll explain that in a few. Thin wall behavior. The internal thin wall type I almost always have set to allow single extrusion fill, because what that does is uses a thicker line up to 150% of the nozzle width. So you can cut down on the amount of infill in little tiny spaces between walls instead of getting that really rapid zigzag pattern and shaking things all over the place. It'll just do one thicker line to try to fill that in where it can. And the only other thing I have set here normally is minimum travel for retraction. If you're only moving a few millimeters, it makes absolutely no sense to retract, because it's not going to have time to retract and stop oozing by the time it moves 3 millimeters. So that's what I have set there. And that's pretty much it. So those are all our settings. They all look good. So now we're going to come over to Tools and the Variable Settings wizard. And you see there's a red plane there. That would be where it's going to split the process. So if we're going to make this an orange cone with 2 white stripes, let's say, like the last one, what we need to do is split this process everywhere we want the color to change. So we're going to move this down a bit to where we want our first white stripe to start. We'll say there. That looks close enough. And we have to click Add Location. And we'll move up to where we want the white stripe to stop. Add Location. Move up again to where we want the next white stripe to start. Add Location. And then finally where we want that stripe to end. And Add Location. I don't think you can't go back and change these. If you made a mistake, you want to move them around, you got to start over. So you have to hit cancel, or you can go to remove and move them around. Okay, so now we hit split process. Now you see we have 5 processes down here. Because we'll have one will be the base and the first bit of orange color, then the white stripe, then the orange color between the stripes, the next white stripe, and then the very top. So we'll go up here to process 1, and we want this one to print with the left extruder, because that's where I'm going to put my orange or red or blue or pink or whatever color you're going to use. We'll set this to the left extruder. Additions for the skirt, I'm always going to leave that set to left. And infill I also want to be printed with the left. And if we were using a model with support, we'd want to go in here and make sure that was printing with the correct extruder as well. So that one's all set. We'll go to process 2. This is the first white stripe. So we want to make sure we go in here and change this to right. Whoops, I made a mistake. Let's go back there. Infill we want to also change to right. Alright, now that's right. This one's already going to be set to left because that was our initial profile, but we'll check it anyway to make sure. Yep, left and infill left, that's good. This is our next white stripe, so we want this one to print with the right extruder and the infill with the right extruder. And then we'll just check this last process to be sure it says left. It does. And it says left there as well. Okay, so now this is ready to slice and print. Hit prepare. Make sure you select all processes so they'll all print. And okay. And there we go. Over here I have the coloring set to the active tool head. So it shows me anything in blue is going to print with tool 0, which is E0 on our machines. So anything in blue is going to print with that. Anything in green is going to print with tool 1 or E1. So there you go. You can do that of course with any model. You want to just add a little color to. You could do this several times and have it print several different colors or mixes as well. That's just a quick way to slice up a otherwise boring model and add a little color to it. Hope that helps you out and inspires you to try some new things with your A10M and A20M with S3D. Have a good night.